Ladies and gentlemen, it's Preacher! Recently been a lot of bitching and moaning, including myself, around some of the aspects of the Garrison. We started this very early on with the Garrison prison, and it's likely, and someone said this has been confirmed, but I couldn't find the source, is that Garrisons will no longer be a feature of the game going forward. So, one of the things I really hate, and I've lost potential members of staff here, and I've lost members of staff in the past for the attitude of, no, this doesn't work, and that's it. No suggestion as to what could possibly be done to make it better and improved upon and all that kind of stuff, which I think is really, really important. I think it's super important to not only say this doesn't work, but then expand upon it and maybe this would work, maybe that would work. One of the great things I love about Ghosty is, you'll notice in the web show, is when one of us throws out an idea, we both expand on it and try and work on it and see if we can get something better out of it, rather than just being, no, that doesn't work, grumpy face, fold my arms, cross my eyes, and that's about as far as it goes. So, with that in mind, this is my ideas for what I would like to see with the Garrison. Because for me, the Garrison is a wonderful, wonderful thing. It is. It's a great idea. It's finally the first step towards player housing that we've been hoping for a long term, and I see no reason why the Garrison couldn't be a permanent feature of the game for every expansion going forward. But in order for that to happen, this is how I would have designed the Garrison, how I would love to have seen it implemented, and change a few of the things around. What I would love to see in the comments section, ideally, is not just, no, don't like that, because obviously I'm going to have ideas which some of you dislike, is I would prefer this. Or maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that, and ideas thrown around, suggestions, rather than just say we don't like it and therefore it gets taken away. And that's not the way anything should go, in my opinion. So without further ado, let's kick off, and we're going to move through this in kind of steady process. Firstly, the location. As I would really like Garrisons to be a permanent feature of the game, for going forward forever, the location of the Garrison is really wrong to me. And the more I thought about it over the last few days, the more I sort of came to the conclusion that having the Garrison in Draenor was a bad move. Because that means it's limited to Draenor. Because obviously once we move on to the next expansion and move back into our normal timelines, whatever you want to say, we're unlikely to want to return to Draenor as we see it now, and therefore the Garrison will become derelict and a whole waste of time, blah, 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 and this entire piece of content just becomes null and void. Where would I like them to be? As is the theme of today's video. I believe, now, I'm going to be rolling with a few ideas here. One, inconvenience can be a good thing. Okay? Inconvenience can be a good thing. Whether you like it or not, inconvenience can be a good thing. Also, the Garrison should never nullify the outside world. It should never render outside world useless in any way. So having said that, I would really, really like to see the Garrisons relocated to a new area which is created in your race's starting zone. And I think that would be a wonderful thing. For a number of reasons. One, it repopulates the world. Because the Garrison Hearthstone does exist, and it's fine, 20-minute cooldown is fine, there are going to be occasions when people don't have it, and therefore they're going to have to travel through those areas. These are also the areas where new players are. And there are lots of new players joining World of Warcraft, whether you believe it or not, and they're going to see very high-level players traveling through their zones while they're doing their thing. Now, a couple of problems with that are potentially griefers. Now, obviously, you can't PvP in those areas, but griefers do exist, so an area located kind of away from the questing areas would be ideal, but traveling somewhat along the main road would be nice. A nice garrison area in your home world. Now, this allows for themed garrison zones, because obviously in the Ore Control starting area it would be themed around those, in the Blood Elf one it would be themed around those, and right now we can all agree that the Garrison has a very static theme. If you do have a barracks, all you can do is change the NPCs, which I think you'll agree, concerning the amount of NPCs that aren't exactly guards that are in your Garrison, really doesn't make much of a difference in any way, shape or form. So after you change them to your preferred race or whatever, you barely notice the difference after just a couple of moments. Whereas if the buildings, etc. were entirely themed about your race, that would be much more aesthetically pleasing, and would probably promote some sort of race changes amongst Blizzard and make them some cash, is that people would prefer one over the other, especially the casual bases who aren't worried about racials anymore, which are kind of irrelevant already, would certainly prefer to have a more themic and a more aesthetically pleasing to them Garrison to live in. Now, you might say, Preach, that seems really inconvenient. That can be okay as long as it's not too inconvenient. If returning to your major city or towards your garrison outside of your garrison Hearthstone isn't too bad, then it's okay. In my eyes, that's alright. Most of the time we Hearthstone back anyway. You have to ask yourself, how many times do you fly back to your garrison? It won't be many. And certainly if you know you can only do it once, then you're probably going to be a little bit more careful about how you do it. So then you're going to say to me, well, how will it really repopulate the world if you already garrison back? This moves on to my next step. Really convenient buildings and convenient functions have to go. They should not be in the garrison in the first place. I was the first person to be like, why are you putting things like training dummies in the garrison? When training dummies were a big populace of people who were having encounters. This is an MMO. We should be having many encounters with other people. You're unlikely to find strangers in your garrison unless something's broken. Okay? So training dummy areas were a place where there were lots of people congregating. And therefore things were getting said, discussions were being had, not always positive, but still conversations were taking place. You were meeting other players. You're not going to do that by the training dummies in your base. Similarly with the auction house, that has to go. That should be in the major cities, which then promotes seeing people in the outside world and actually puts more people into places that you don't ordinarily see them, like the Exodar, like Silvermoon, like Thunderbluff. All these things can be helpful. They can be. They repopulate the world in a starting area where people like to see what the high-level players are doing. So I think that would be a cool idea. For me, anyway, I would be more than happy to have mine in Tirisfal Glades. I would change my rogue back to undead in a heartbeat and have my garrison in the Tirisfal Glades. I would love that to happen because I love the style and look of the undead buildings. I love them. I think they're great. Not everybody does, and that's fine. You can pick and choose. It's all good. So, auction house has to go, bank has to go, transmog has to go, guild vault has to go. And yes, these are convenient. I have all these things in my garrison. And I would be more than happy to give them up for the sake of a better game. I would be more than happy to give up that tiny convenience for a better game. Every day of the week. With every breath I take, I would love to do that. That would be fine. So, expanding on the idea of the convenience buildings. The profession buildings should go. And let's talk about buildings in general. Buildings should not be completely practical. That's a terrible, terrible idea. Once you create buildings that have a decent practicality to them, what ends up happening is it's no different than a talent system. In that some will be better than others. And when that happens, you're not having choice. You're not having choice in those scenarios. When there's a decent practical reward, you're not having choice. I have a war mill because it gives me a free token every week. That means I don't have to worry about that. It's practical. I like it because of that. The rest of its functions, like producing weapons and armor for my followers, couldn't give a shit about, but it gives me this reward, which is not exciting. It's certainly not fun, but I have it because of that. My barracks. I keep a barracks. Why? Because I get access to 25 followers. It's boring, but because of the practical rewards of having 5 extra followers to do missions, it's worth having it. I gain the benefit of that every 8 hours if I chose to do that. I would gain the full benefit of having 5 extra followers and potentially 5 extra salvage crates or whatever coming into my hands. A lot of extra money every 8 hours potentially because I have a level 3 barracks. Is that building interesting or fun? No, it's not. I have an inn. My inn provides me with treasure missions and my followers, which then goes hand in hand with having the extra barracks because I gain more money from it. I can recruit followers, which we'll talk about shortly in the follower system, but that building's not practical or fun. It isn't. The salvage yard should go for the reasons I've already listed. The fact that the salvage exists and still produces good money and still occasionally gives me a 12,000 gold ring or whatever it might be means that it's still worth. And I don't like it. It's inconvenient. It's practical, but it's inconvenient. I don't like sifting through salvage and selling all the greys and seeing what greens I got and sending them off to my enchanter and all that kind of stuff. It's not fun. It's not interesting. I don't want it. But it's better than my other choices. And because I have limited space with which to use these plots, I have to be practical about it. And that shouldn't be what the garrison is about. For me, the garrison should be about reflecting you as a person, as a player. Reflecting your character in some fashion. These buildings don't reflect me at all. Profession buildings. Let's start with the mine and the herb garden. I would like to see a rule in place where you shouldn't have to check in with things at your garrison any more than reasonably once every 3 or 4 days. Ideally, once a week. That gets rid of the garrison prison problem. If you don't have to do things in there, and I mean have to as in if you don't, you'll potentially lose resources, so players feel the need to do them every day, then you have a better environment for people to go out and do other things. So that means that if you're going to force the mine and herb garden upon people, they should reset once a week. They should provide slightly more, and I mean slightly more, but reset once a week. This means that herbalists and miners don't have a redundant profession, which in essence is what they have now. A completely redundant profession because of these things that have been given to every single player. Everybody gets them. Everybody can have them. And that's terrible. We don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want people to have a redundant profession that they've leveled in. A lot of people enjoy mining and herbing. You might not. That's fine. That's okay. But there are a lot of people who like to throw on a movie after a raid or whatever and go mining and herbing for an hour. And guess what? That once again puts more people back into the world, doing stuff in the outside world, and your garrison should not render the outside world redundant. And at the moment, the herb garden and the mine do. They significantly do, because all the herbs and all the ore in the game is mostly coming by a huge margin from the mine and the herb garden. If you gave it just enough to cover professions, if you're going to keep the current profession system, that's okay. But any more that you wanted for crafting something nice or doing something cool, crafting all your flasks, should be done by herbalists and miners. That's where that should be coming from. Whether or not it was an attempt to kill bots or some fashion, I don't know, but that's not my interest. They can be defeated in other ways. There are lots of people who enjoy herbing and mining. They do. So giving them the right to go and do that, I think, is more than fair. Profession buildings. I cannot fathom why Blizzard decided to gate the collection of resources. There are lots and lots of players who enjoy playing the auction house and playing with professions. They like seeking out rare recipes. Those are removed from the game. They like collecting things. It gives them a reason to do reputations. It gives them a reason to do things outside of the game other than raiding and PvP. So taking that away from them and then gating it off with the work order and one daily cooldown system seems very, very anti-MMO to me. My solution would be pretty simple. Give people the ability to make as many of something as they want. That will solve the problem almost by itself, because it wasn't a problem originally. This wasn't an issue. The people who were very much in control of the enchanting market would make sure that they had more resources than the other player, because that was part of their game. They enjoyed that. They did that. What I would like to see in its place is probably something like a research lab. A research lab which then gave me quests to go out into the world, which might result me in, and this leads us on to our next thing, results with a follower, maybe. Let's say you're a tailor. One example could be a research lab which you have to devote some time to. You have to collect resources that aren't just sumptuous fucking fur. You have to do various things outside in the world, various objectives, maybe even reach certain reputations or whatever it might be. And then you can research something which will give you the location, such as a research map and some prophecy about a certain set of gear. So you then have to build this set of gear, this tailoring set of gear, this cloth armor set, and while wearing that and going to a certain place in the world, then summons a boss, an outside boss that you can take your friends to or whatever it might be, and from there you can gain a follower or a recipe. Ideally a follower, because I would love to see recipes tied to followers, especially the rare ones. If they were tied to followers, that would then enable you to have a follower trading system. Followers should be able to be purchased from the auction house. They're contracts, not a slave force. You're not buying a person, but buying their contract with a rare recipe. So if you're not into that, again, it's all about choice. If you're not into doing all the research lab stuff, that's fine. Other people who love doing that stuff can then put them on the auction house, and that's a nice income for them. And you can buy the follower that has your rare recipe because it's bind on pickup or whatever it might be, and then you can do that. All this stuff makes your professions far more interesting and gives you something to be doing outside of raids and PvP. This is content that you can be doing outside in the world. So on to the follower system then. The follower system was something I really liked at first, and I made an effort to go out and collect every follower I could. Unfortunately, because of the inn, It then became apparent that that was a waste of time, where I could go out and farm reputation for days on end with something like the Laughing Skull to gain Cacklebone or whatever he's called on my faction. What I could actually do is recruit a follower and just do my everyday missions, and eventually he'll be capped, and I don't have to do much other than click my missions for 30 seconds rather than go out and farm Everbloom Wilds or some fucking Fill the Bar quest. What this led to occurring, which is the case on a lot of main characters now, is I have as many inactive followers as I do active ones. Because I just was oversaturated with followers. Having far less followers, but far more unique followers through the systems we've just talked about, would allow trading. It would certainly allow somebody to focus on creating good followers, give them something to do, and all that kind of stuff, which then means that the followers have more character, they have more purpose, and there's a reason to seek out certain ones. Right now, we're just looking to make sure our quests say 100%, which is about as criminal as it gets in terms of an interesting system. I have an army of around 70 followers. Most of them don't do a goddamn thing. A vast majority of them don't do a goddamn thing. They just sit in an invisible world somewhere doing something, I don't know what. They're banished to the ether. And that system is really quite poor. I can look at my list of followers and see countless hours lost gaining something which ultimately, because of the RNG nature of follower abilities, was completely a waste of time. And that was never fun. What is a great moment for a lot of people is when you send your followers out and you see them walk through your base. That is very cool. You see your followers for the first time. But where did they come from? Why did they have spawning from nowhere? It's very nice to see them out in the world. I would also can't believe, and I would introduce a system of transmogging your followers. How is that not implemented? And how much fun would people have with that? Not only do people like farming transmog gear for themselves, but often when they're doing these transmog runs, they also come up against much gear which isn't for them, and therefore it gets sold or disenchanted or whatever. They would certainly enjoy to have themed followers. The all-red army or whatever it might be. They would love to have the ability to transmog them. I personally wouldn't care. This isn't stuff that I would like, but I know there are a lot of people out there who would absolutely love the option to transmog their followers and to make them all look as cool as they like. That would be such a simple thing to implement. We could have a follower bank which stores all sorts of random gear. It's absolutely enormous and just ties the item code to yourself. So we're not talking exactly something really difficult here. Very similar to void storage. And you could then transmog your followers in whatever the hell you liked. And make them all look cool. Make them all look the same. Make them all really swaggy. I know a lot of people would really enjoy that. Enjoy that, I should say. Really, really enjoy that. Whereas I personally wouldn't care. It's a wonderful feature for other players. So we've just lost a lot of buildings. I think the profession buildings need to go. The mine and the herb garden should be optional. They shouldn't be forced on everybody. And all the practical buildings should be gone. I know from a mains perspective, there are some buildings, not a lot, but some I would like to have. I would like to have a stables. I'd like to have a goblin workshop. Why? They're impractical and they're fun. I would like to have them, but due to the practical nature of the other buildings, I can't really have them. I can't justify them. So this practicality nonsense needs to go out of your garrison. Needs to go. What I would then do would make the garrisons much bigger. Much, much bigger. And control it very much similar to a SimCity style. With a top-down view of the building where I can do stuff exactly as I want it. Exactly as I want it. And considering this could be content in my eyes that goes on forever, I think it probably is worth the investment in sorting this out. How big would I have it? Probably similar to the Tillers area, or Half Hill. Round about that big, where your main building is up on a hill, and you have an entire area around you that you can do stuff with. An introduction of a lot of superfluous, purely cosmetic buildings would be amazing! Amazing! Totally cosmetic, serve no practical purpose, but guess what? When I walk into my garrison, it should be mine. This should reflect my character. And when I go into somebody else's garrison, it should be completely different. Completely different. They should not look very similar. They shouldn't. What would I have in there? Lots of stuff. Why, as a PvEer, a classic PvEer with a long history of killing major raid bosses, why do I not have a building that reflects that? That reflects all the armor of showing an Onyxia's scale, or Nefarian's wing, or something along those lines. The shields of my fallen foes, and rare bosses, and things like that. Where are they not on there? And you can mouse over them, like similar to a trophy room, essentially. Where is my big trophy room? And I want that. Absolutely, I want that. That would be very cool with the date on it. So I don't have to look through a pissing achievements menu to see that, with a nice date on it of when I did that. I want that. If I was an achievement hunter and I'd been out and sought out all the books and scrolls and stuff, I should have a library that reflects all that stuff. Absolutely, I should do that. If I'm really into transmog, I should have a large armory. Very similar to an Iron Man thing or a bat cave, where I have all my favourite transmog sets that I can preset and I can order them and distribute them on dummies, and they're all sat there waiting for me. All the armors that I want, predetermined transmog sets that are set up on dummies, and I can have them in a big glorious armory. I would like roving fields and streams. I would like stuff like that. Not a lot of people would, but I would. And I would certainly expand on the stables. I have hundreds of mounts. I have so many mounts. Now the stables did a cool thing of putting some of your mounts into your stables. Personally, I would like them to be out in my garrison. I want to see my cats and tigers walking around my garrison. I want to see some of my dragons on top of the buildings. I want to see them flying in the air when I look up. I want to see my dragons doing that. I want to see my birds. I want to see my mechs walking around. I want all that going on in my garrison, which is why it would be bigger. I want to build things like little barracks for everybody else. Where do all these people go at night? I don't know. My base is full of people. Where the fuck do they go at night? So why can't I have a barracks that has my followers in it? Yeah? And they're all kind of having a sleep or doing whatever, and they're congregating around there. I would like a bar where I can see my followers are playing cards and having a drink and all that kind of stuff. And that certainly brings us to our main feature, is I would have one garrison per account. And that's your garrison per realm. And my alts are in there. They don't look like my main character unless I have all the same character, in which case that's kind of funny and not a big deal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the game in any way. It doesn't make me better geared. Alright? So we could have things like that. I would like to see my alts in there doing things and create situations, gaming tables, all this kind of cosmetic stuff, whatever I chose to do. If I want to have a landscape fields and rivers and streams and all ponied up, I can do that. If I want to create a casino and stupid fun gaming area, I can do that. None of it is practical, but I guarantee people will love to do it. They would like to spend time on it, and they would like to invite their friends to see their garrison. Is there any reason to go and visit your friend's garrison at the moment other than to get an enchant, or if you're still doing invasions? None at all. It doesn't need to be like that. It doesn't. It should be entirely cosmetic. Entirely cosmetic. And fun. It's still a home base where you still get things done. So why would you come back to your garrison then if it was entirely cosmetic? The visiting traders, I think, is a wonderful idea. The visiting traders is an absolutely fantastic idea. And the idea of your follower missions is a good idea. Unfortunately, it's implemented in the most criminal way possible, where it's easily comparable to a mobile game, which is terrible. That's terrible. Now, for the most part, I don't mind some of it. If you're sending them out for XP and all that kind of stuff. What I will say is the more important missions, and for this we'll use the example of your supply cache or your item mission, that seems to me like a wasted opportunity for scenarioed content. If we created those missions to be a scenarioed content where you can do it with yourself and followers, or you can do it with guildmates, that would be much better in my eyes. Because Blizzard wants you to have this gear. They do. They want you to have this gear. So it's not about getting the right followers to make sure you can do it. It's about having fun while doing it. Now, if you do it like this, what you'll have is that your guildmates, who unlock your follower missions, will get them at the same time. And now you have generated content that everybody in the game wants to do, regardless of their progress level. And it's content that will get done. And it can be fun and interesting. It could be stealing a piece of armor. So you've got a mission to go through, very similar to the puzzle things that we saw in Mists of Pandaria, where there was the floor tiles and all that kind of stuff. Little puzzle arenas that you go into and you get your item. And you can do it with your friends, which makes it easier. And there's no problem with that. It's not an issue. Doing that and making that more fun than sending your followers out and watching the timer go down. Right? It's a simple, effective way, and it just seems like a missed opportunity. For the stupid, simple things of collecting XP, collecting a little bits of gold, whatever it might be, sure, leave that as the mobile game version if you want. Leave that as the mobile game version. That's okay. But I would much prefer the system with no missions or way less missions. Certainly missions that weren't on an 8-hour timer. 3 or 4 days would be better. Blizzard, it makes no difference to Blizzard if you log in every day or every 8 hours, or if you log in every 4 days. You still pay the same amount of money to them. So there's no reason that you should have to check back in your garrison daily. And at the current state, on its worst missions, it's like 8 hours. 12 in some cases, I believe, that you can send your followers out to do things. And that should never be the case. This isn't a mobile game where we're hoping people will log in and use microtransactions. That doesn't work here. So garrison missions that last 3 or 4 days are far better. And then you have these ones which are the important ones, which you can get done quickly. Of all the missions you want to get done quickly, it's your item one. It still doesn't respawn for a couple of weeks or whatever, so what does it matter if you get it in 8 hours or you get it in 10 minutes? None at all. Makes no difference. So introducing a system like that for me, where it's scenario content which you can do with a group of buddies, or you can choose to do it with your followers and have the same level of success, is fine in my eyes. Fine in my eyes, and is a missed opportunity for content that you can do at any level of the game. Which is what we're all after, is stuff to do. Just because we're raiding, just because we're PvPing at top end, it doesn't mean we should have less content to do. That should never, ever be the case. When it comes to followers, I really, really, truly believe that the follower trading system should be implemented. The ability to recruit followers should never have been brought in. And is a big mistake. Because we should not have an abundance of followers that don't do anything. That, for me, is terrible. It's really quite poor to have that system. We should never have this system of gated content behind professions or gating of any faction, or of any way, behind content. And certainly not conveniences that allow us to stay in our garrison indefinitely and get most of our stuff done without going to the outside world. To keep the garrisons relevant to current content, you'll still have your missions. You'll still have people coming in with the garrison campaigns that would obviously be sent to your garrison for things to do that. So you still have reason to use your garrison as effectively as you do now. You just don't have the burden that comes with it. And it just makes them way more fun and interesting in my eyes. I'd love to see your thoughts on it. So let me know. Alright guys, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.